Hi Minion, Sunshine here. So I got into Pepakura about 2 years ago, and so far the number one thing that I've had problems with is scaling. It seems to be something that can be really complex in the Pep world, and it can get complicated pretty quickly. But I found some tips that will help you grasp it a little easier. So I'll show you in this video how to get started with Pepakura Designer 3, and then in my next video I'll show you some of the more complex aspects of scaling. Um, the very first thing that you have to understand is Pepakura Designer 3 is free. You can use it, you can change things, you can change your paper size, you can do whatever, you can move pieces around, whatever you want to do. But if you want to save it and then continue to work on it later, you have to pay. And it's only 30 bucks, you guys. That's 30 bucks for an investment that is really not bad. You can make armor that if you bought it would cost you, anywhere from a couple $100 to a couple thousand. So don't just blow it off. Support this company. They're doing really good things. Um, the very first thing that you have to do is import file, because you gotta have something to work on. And you can get PDO files anywhere. There are hundreds of boards. RFP, the 405th, the list goes on and on and on. Halo has wiki, Gears of War has wiki, basically anything you can imagine is out there. So I just went and grabbed a Halo Sword, Energy Sword file. So now that we've imported the file, the next thing that you need to know is you need a real mouse. You need an actual mouse, because a lot of the stuff that happens is indicative of having a mouse that can manipulate objects in a 3D world. The scrolling function and left and right click and drag simultaneously, so just a laptop touchpad is really not going to cut it for this, and you can pick up a mouse for a couple bucks. Doesn't have to be a super fancy one, it can just be a mouse. The next thing that I have fumbled around with and failed miserably was my paper settings. By default, the paper settings are in A4, but my printer doesn't like A4 very much, so I just go back to the standard letter size, because that's what you can get cardstock in fairly cheaply. And you can see that that shrinks your paper size, so we'll deal with that in a second. The next thing that you want to do is look at your scaling, because that can actually change your pieces ratio. So there's no need to move them all around if you're just going to change the scale. So the very first thing that I found with scaling that makes things so much simpler is this little handy thing called measure the distance between 2 points. So you want to find what is your longest, widest, or thickest point. Depth, height, and width is the references they use. But for this, I'm going to use the height, just because I think it would look ridiculous if it was overly long. So that's going to tell us that it's 743.95 millimeters. That's great, but for us American folk who don't really understand millimeters all that hot, the best thing we can do is go to Google and ask them how many millimeters are in a foot. So it tells us that it's about 2.5 foot long, which seems a little short in my mind when you start thinking that Master Chief is what, like 7'5" or something ridiculously tall like that. So I went and Googled what the actual dimensions of the Halo Energy Sword are, because I kind of wanted to know. I'm all nerdy like that. So I found out that they're saying the actual length of it is around a little over 4 foot for both Halo Combat and Halo 2. So you might want to consider scaling it up if you're a tall person, but for someone like me that's like 5 foot, kind of short, it's about the right size. But I'm gonna say if you're like average guy size, like 5'8" and up, I would consider scaling it up. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. And the easiest way to scale something up is, again, go to your 2D menu, and let's say that, and to scale factor, and let's say that you want it to be, I don't know, another foot longer. So go back to Google, go back to your millimeters, and let's say we want it to be 3.5 feet. So that tells us that it is 1066 millimeters. So we go back to our Pepakura and we type in the height as 1066 millimeters. And you can see that it automatically adjusts the other scale factors. So that makes our pieces much bigger. So the next thing that we have to do is get our pieces to fit our paper. And this is honestly the most time-consuming part of doing anything in Pepakura. It just seems like this takes forever, but it's not that complicated once you get into it and you learn the actual function. So I'll just show you with a couple pieces, because you basically can get the idea. The first thing that you want to go to is divide and connect faces. This is a really handy tool for working with this stuff for when your pieces are bigger than your paper size. And you'll see that this gives us a green line when we're in the middle of the piece and a red line with arrows when we're not. What the green line means is you can cut this piece in half. So if we click it, it separates the piece. And what the red arrows mean is this piece goes with this piece. So if you click this again, it will join itself back together. This is also a really handy tip for when you're putting things together. It allows you to pull this up, look at the numbers on the faces of the things, and find the other piece very, very quickly. So we want to select and move things around. And I'm fairly frugal with my paper, so if you want to try to compact things in as tightly as you can get them to save on paper, I really would recommend it. Then once you do that, let's see if the numbers are on. Yes, they are. So as we zoom in further, you can see these little black dots appear. What those actually are is they are numbers. 102. The way that you get those on, if they aren't on, is show edge ID. This is the numbers that allow you to match the pieces up together, and trust me, it is very handy. So if you turn that off, away goes your numbers, and trust me, you really don't want to do that. Wrong one. So that allows you to see which edges go where. But you basically can just move things around. Oh, and I accidentally turned the page numbers on too, which can be handy, but it doesn't print, so it's not something that you really need unless you just can't figure it out. So basically what you'll end up doing is sitting here for an hour or so, moving these pieces around, cutting them in half, and you can also rotate the things around one of their points. So if you find a piece that just doesn't want to fit in a page, like, let's see, like this piece here, you can actually rotate this piece and it will fit in the page much nicer than if we had just left it alone. After you get all of these pieces orientated and in the right page, the next thing you want to do is go to save, of course, because that's a lot of work, so you definitely want to save it. Usually I do save as because I don't like to modify the original PDO file, so I would rather save it as a new file. And let's say it's Halo Energy Sword edited. And then that saves all of the changes that you have made to that original file in a new file, so you don't corrupt your original file that you're working with. After that's done, you go to print, tell it what printer you want it to go to, all of the pages, and away you go. You're done. So that's the very simple introduction to just the basics of Pepakura. You can follow me on YouTube, and I'll try to be posting some more in-depth stuff as the days go on, both with my Silhouette Cameo and with Cricut tutorials and individual cutting tutorials, and hopefully as things progress and I have a little bit more time, I'll show you how to resin things and how to Bondo things and so on and so forth. So keep up with me, and I will see y'all later.